Hi everyone, Rob from Off the Arrow Shelf here. This is my club member and associate today.
Hi, I'm Matt.
The idea about today is something a bit new that we're coming up with, something that we've been talking about. There are 13 different shooting styles under the National Field Archery Society's banner. And if you're new to archery, if you're returning to archery, it can get really confusing. So what we're going to try and do is go through some of the more common styles, give you a breakdown of what equipment you want to think about, what positioning you're going to be doing with your fingers, whether you're going to be shooting wooden arrows or what have you. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to be looking at traditional Bowhunter, which is one of the newer styles, and basically taking it from there. I'm going to be trying to answer the questions. Don't necessarily know everything about it, but we'll see how it all goes. If you like it, let us know. Drop a comment in the comments box, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Yeah, if you don't like it, still let us know. Tell us if we've missed something out or something along those lines. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, so I returned back to archery after 20 years away, and I used to do field archery before I gave it up, and then I've come back to it. And so much has changed, and there's so many more classes that coming back, the hardest part for me to learn was all the different classes and the little changes between classes sometimes as well. So that's why when we were talking about it, I said that the videos that would be most useful for me and for new shooters would be to go through each class and sort of have a bit of a demonstration of what the different kit looks like, which is why I'm holding this today. So am I right in thinking that this would be a traditional Bowhunter bow?
Yeah. Couple of things about traditional Bowhunter that you need to think about straight off. It can be any kind of bow that's not a crossbow or a compound. But the crucial thing being is that you can't have, like we have on other bows where you've got an arrow rest and a plunger button. You can't have that. You're shooting it off the shelf.
Yeah,
really. That's what most people will do.
okay.
So that's my black book takedown. So this one is set up for a plunger button and a rest, whereas this one in a traditional Bowhunter you can't use a plunger button or a rest. Yes. You can build a rest up a bit, and you can have a face plate.
I was going to ask that question. So just because in the rules, when I read through the rules, it said you couldn't have a rest, and then I see a lot of people have leather and Velcro.
I'll show it on the other camera. It's probably a bit easier to show. This one's got the loop side of Velcro on it, and that's there to basically protect the actual riser, and the arrow will sit in there. You can have a protective plate, and that's what they are. They're basically there to protect the riser.
Protection rather than a rest.
Yeah, they still, I suppose you could actually argue that they are a form because of the arrow will rest on it, but they're not like a wire rest or a spring rest or a wraparound rest like those.
So a rest would be considered something that's kind of separate from the bow, that if you take it off,
added,
it's
so
added on.
I think you've got on your bear bow, you've got a wraparound rest.
I have, yeah.
So you're shooting it off the shelf, and that's one of the things about the name traditional. The idea being it's a very simple bow. So as I said, this is a takedown recurve, and this is an ILF setup. You don't have to have an ILF setup. You can have a bolt-ons. You could have it as a one piece, but the caveat is that there's no stabilizers, there's no sights, there's no additional weights or anything along those lines. Yeah. The only thing you could add onto it would be a bow quiver. So that's when you have a mounting on the side and you have your arrows mounted in there.
Okay.
And the only restriction where that comes in is that if you've got a bow quiver mounted, you've got to use the arrows out rather than arrows in a hip quiver or a back quiver.
Okay.
So in essence, it's a very simple, it's a very straightforward bow. Since I've mentioned arrows, that's one thing that is probably a little bit confusing. It's called traditional Bowhunter, but you couldn't use an arrow like this one, which is a wooden arrow with feather fletchings. You can't use wooden arrows, you can't use natural materials, so you couldn't use bamboo or wood.
Oh, okay.
But you could use something like one of these, which is a carbon arrow, and And she said, this is an Eastern legacy, which though it looks like.
I looked at that. I thought it was a wooden arrow.
Yeah. Well, this one, and I think there's a couple of bear paws kicking around just over there. The timber sticks. Yep.
Yeah.
So these would still be acceptable to be used because they're non-natural materials, but they're feather fletched. So you've got to use feather. You can't use veins. You can't use plastic ones.
Okay.
Yeah. You've got two there that are free fletch, and you've got one of my X-wing ones which has got the 4 fletch.
Yeah.
But as long as they're feather fletchings, that's fine. That's completely acceptable. But it can't be a wooden arrow. And with the carbon or the aluminium arrow, it's got to be that.
Is there any restriction to the head you can use?
The pile. The only restriction is a standard restriction on everything we're NFAS. We've got a 3D target over here, which I brought in because we were talking about this the other day. If you have a look there, arrows, when they puncture into a 3D, will leave a hole. But what you don't want is their excessive damage to be done. So you can't use something like a broadhead. A few years ago, there were some that had almost like a corkscrew finish. The idea was it would encourage the arrow to spin in flight, and they ended up actually doing quite a lot of damage, and they were subsequently banned, if memory serves me correctly. Okay. So as long as it's not a broadhead, as long as it's a standard sort of, well, I'll show on the closer camera is probably easier, sort of standard screw-in points, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Then that's fine.
Those are all fine.
Yeah.
Just another question, and because it's called traditional bow hunter, you get, when you come back to it, you get this picture in your head of people with all very traditional equipment, leather quivers and all that sort of stuff. Is there any kind of rules or regulations around the other equipment you carry when you are shooting traditional bow hunting?
No, you can carry as much or as little as you like. So I've got the Alpha Pack from the Push, and I've got a load of stuff in that. And I occasionally shoot traditional bow hunter. And I've got in there binoculars, a first aid kit, spare string, some points for the arrows. You don't have to use like a wooden riser. You can have an aluminium riser as long as you've got one that you can shoot off the shelf with. It's just the name of it brings in connotations of like it being traditional.
Yeah.
It's a bit like bear bow. Everybody thinks, bear bow, you've got to have an aluminium riser. You don't have to. Like in hunting tackle, because you use wooden arrows, people say, you've got to have a wooden riser. No, you don't have to.
When I first read traditional bow hunter, I had a picture in my head of long bows and wooden arrows, and it's not that at all, which is why this session is particularly useful.
Yeah, it is confusing. It's one of the newer classes. It's really, really popular because it is a very easy class to get into. Archery is still relatively inexpensive when you consider it. A basic takedown recurve you can pick up for about £80. A good flat bow for under £150. Set of arrows is £60. For a decent set of arrows, you can get ones that are cheaper. You can use a tab or a glove. There's no restrictions where that's concerned. And unlike hunting tackle, which specifies you've got to use a split fingers, as in one finger above and 2 fingers below, there isn't anything in traditional bow hunter, if I remember correctly. There's no restriction on that. Mm-hmm. You can't face walk and you can't string walk.
Yeah.
But no, there's not a restriction on that. You've got to wear a leather glove, or you've got to use a tab or anything along those lines. The only thing you do have restrictions on is the selection of arrows, and unlike bear bow where you can have a stabilizer, you can't have. So it's very much it's kind of almost more of a bear bow than bear bow is. Yeah. And I think that's the issue that people kind of get confused about as to what they're talking about. But it is a very popular, very good one to get into, very easy to get into. I think probably certainly one of the most popular, if not the most popular one that you see are national tournaments.
I noticed when we had our open shoot down at the club, there were a lot of people shooting this class.
Yes.
It seemed very popular.
It's very popular. It's very transferable as well, because there's this kind of style that's shot in a lot of other societies as well, and I think it's easy for people to pick up and sort of run with. So it is very popular indeed. Anyway, that's the breakdown of traditional bow hunter. I think I've got it all right. If you think I'm not, haven't, drop us a comment in the comments box. Let us know if you like it. But all being well, fingers crossed, we'll do a few more of these.
Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find me on offthearrowshelf.com or on Instagram, offthearrowshelf again. You can even email me on offthearrowshelf@yahoo.co.uk. But most of all, remember to stay safe and enjoy your archery.